Hey everyone, thanks for joining. Today I am speaking with Yasmine Mohammed. Yasmine is an activist and she's the founder of Free Hearts, Free Minds, and she's the author of the book Unveiled, How Western Liberals Empower Radical Islam. She's also, I'm happy to say, a good friend of mine. Hey Yasmine, thank you for coming back on.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you
So
for
yeah,
having me.
oh no, anytime. So yeah, I wanted to have you on because, okay, with what's happened in Afghanistan, and I mean, I know you've put out your piece, and then I did my little thing where I talked about when I was there. Um, but yeah, if we could talk a bit about that, start with that, and then go from wherever it leads to.
Yeah.
So, do you want to start with your piece, like what you'd written about?
Yeah. I had written about how the there's this, the world is paying attention to what's happening to the women in Afghanistan, which is good, and I'm happy to see that. But of course, they're paying attention because it's an opportunity to bludgeon Biden, right? Because we can point to Americans as the culprit here. So that's why it's easy to criticize. But when women are treated in a very similar manner in 50 other Muslim majority countries under different Islamic governments, we don't talk about that. Nobody's horrified by it. And so what I was saying in my piece was that there's a there is a similarity between the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan and the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria and the Islamic Republic of Iran and the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. Like, are we noticing a pattern, ladies and gentlemen? So, but nobody wants to address the big, huge, massive elephant in the room. They just want to talk about the Taliban. And in fact, you've got your typical noble savage BS going on with like expecting the Taliban to be honest in their negotiations or
Inclusive.
believing their oh god, yeah. Inclusive and believing their promises on how they're going to treat their citizens. And it's ridiculous to me and ridiculous to you and ridiculous to anyone who can see very clearly that these are a group of jihadis. This is a terrorist organization. So in the same way that you would never negotiate with ISIS and expect them to abide by their, we promise to be good, expecting that from the Taliban is a complete joke. And I think that your story that you told about that man that used to stock your fridges with water when you were in Afghanistan with the Canadian military, like, it's just so heartbreaking. And that's happening. I mean, that's happening over and over and over and over again right now. The US has left not just their names, but the biometrics and all sorts of, right? Like all of the people that ever helped the Americans for the past 20 years are now in danger. Not just the Americans, but same thing with the British embassy. Didn't have time to clean out their intelligence before they turned heel and ran out of the country as quickly as they could. And so many lives are in danger right now. The women are in danger. Yes, they are. But now all of these men are in danger too. You can't hide.
Like that old man, like I said, all he did was fill fridges with water. And even after Trump announced that, okay, whatever, this is going to happen, like there were people, who were like, look, I was a groundskeeper on one of the bases. So there's a guy got a job, feed his family. He's like, well, I'm scared for my life because they know that if you worked on the base, that you were in danger. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that, but okay. Like I saw something today about how, I mean, they were comparing to the Taliban with ISIS, and they're like, well, the Taliban's a more reasonable choice. And
Yeah.
it's like, what are you talking about? I mean, like now this is a reversal, right? Because I mean, ISIS grew out of Al Qaeda in Iraq, And now it's like the ISIS came back into Afghanistan. Now it's in there again. I mean, it's I
Yeah.
shouldn't laugh, but it's like, that's what happened.
But it's all the same. It's all the same shit, different pal, right? We all know that. Give it different names. Call it Al Qaeda, call it Boko Haram, call it whatever you want. It's all the same. They're all jihadis and they all have the same exact aims.
With this happening in Afghanistan, and then you've got, okay, the U.S. looks extremely weak and incompetent right now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not saying there were gains made in Iran, but there were a lot of women pushing back. And I mean, I know they were getting arrested. Like, we've spoken to a couple of them, but whatever small ways that they could protest, do you think Iran is now going to take this as like further evidence that, oh, we can do whatever we want? Because I mean, Biden, like, totally went back on that deal with them, the nuclear deal and all that. Like, is that like and I don't want to sound like, like the Red Scare in the 60s or whatever, but like the domino effect of this,
Mm-hmm.
like now you've got the Taliban in power. I mean, they're not going to turn away most jihadis. They might turn away some Shia, but I mean, they are friendly with Iran. That's which is weird, but like what do you see as like a domino effect going down through the Middle East with that?
Yeah, well, that's definitely a fear. And I actually don't think the domino effect is only going to be in the Middle East. I think the domino effect is going to be global. I'm hoping that in this upcoming 20th anniversary of 9/11, that people are going to be remembering a tragedy that happened 20 years ago. They're not going to be talking about a tragedy that just happened currently. I really do think that emboldening them like that, the morale boost that they have right now, it is reminiscent of the way they were after 9/11 when they were celebrating. They were feeling like, look, this is proof that Allah is behind us. We are victorious. We are making the West, succumb to us, pander to us. We are the victors. All that stuff is back. And it's not just in Iran. You see people tweeting this kind of garbage from the UK, from the US, from Canada. People who are, like the UK Sharia Council, or people
There's
who
a guy
are
from
running.
the Five Pillars.
Exactly. From Five Pillars. And, these are journalists, these are politicians, these are leaders in the community. These aren't just random, YouTubers or nobodies just saying this. So it is definitely concerning that they do see this as a morale boosting victory. And they've already, China came out calling the Taliban their brothers and saying we're going to, it's the same Chinese people that kill Muslim people in their country. But it's just.
Okay. With China, that's the whole, the Belt and Road Initiative. So they're going to come down, put in roads, whatever. I mean, Afghanistan is just mines and minerals. That's all it is. It's rocks. Mm-hmm. They want the lithium, they want the heavy metals, so they can, like the rare earth metals, so they can make chips and stuff like that. They need that stuff.
And they agree on the anti-West, anti-American sentiment.
Oh yeah, it's convenient, but okay. So in 2000, I can't remember when the last, that was the year of the pig. I think it was 2019. There was a story, and story came out of China, and they were interviewing people in like around where they were keeping the Uyghurs. And there were flyers being put out, and they said, oh, don't have pictures up for the year of the pig because it'll offend Muslims because it's their heavenly ancestor. And it was just like, oh. So like right next to where that was so weird about it, because the people themselves didn't know anything that was going on about the Uyghurs, right? Like it wasn't being broadcast in China. but at the same time, like they're ignorant of that, but they're saying that like the pig is the heavenly ancestor of the Muslims, and it's like so, like there's that comical aspect, but there's also that really sinister part where like you know like it's right next door, and you don't know what's
Mhm.
going on, and it's so you know that the Taliban is getting cozy with China, like that doesn't surprise me at all. But then you know neither is Pakistan. You know Pakistan's cozy with them.
But that's scary, though.
Yeah.
It's scary that they're cozy with China. It's scary that they're cozy with Pakistan, and
Yeah.
it's scary that they're cozy with Iran. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. Obviously, nobody knows, but people have been saying that all of those, billions of dollars of military equipment, U.S. military equipment that were left behind, are probably all going to end up in the hands of Pakistan. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, but okay. Again, I left there in 2013. So anyone who wasn't there, anyone who was not on the ground, like they're relying on second and third hand information. Like so and okay, I set up communications. I had access. I'm not saying I looked at it. I'm not saying but you also hear things quite a bit. And I was around a lot of information. I was around a lot of brass. Um, so you know what I heard on ground, and when I would come back and I'd see a news story about something that happened while I was there or whatever, or while I'm there I'm
Totally
watching the
different.
news and I'm like, okay,
Mm.
I see the differences. So
Mm.
um but for some of the things I'm hearing, and this makes a lot of sense, like okay, so take the Afghan National Army. Okay, I'm not, there wasn't enough training and they should have held up better, but it was US contractors, let's say the ones who were working with the US, but for the most part it was US contractors that were running the software, maintaining the aircraft, like all the like the stuff behind the scenes they were doing. It wasn't even US military. So when the military pulled out, like contractors were just, okay, you're gone. So at
Mm.
Bagram Air Base, you know, the ANA showed up, and there's no one there. Like contractors are gone, everything gone is gone. So and from what I've again, like from what I understand, the software was taken away. You know, so
They had nothing.
well, they've got the planes and they've got the electronics. I mean,
Mm-mm-mm.
they might not have, I don't know if they'd be able to take out everything from the plane, but if they got rid of the if they got rid of the control software at least on the ground, I think that would help. But then I mean, you still have some of the software in the plane if they couldn't get all that out. Like so again, I don't know, and I don't think anyone really does except inside the military. Exactly what they've got. Uh,
So, but
but
what I
yeah,
mean by they've got nothing is they did not have the personnel. They didn't have, nobody was trained before
oh
these people
no,
left. Yeah.
no, nothing.
They
And
didn't have the intelligence to
yeah,
continue.
okay, yeah, the ANA could not have maintained those aircraft, and I like
Mm.
even some of the heavy, like the personal transports, yeah, sure, but I don't think I don't even know what heavy equipment they had, like if they had, even tanks or anything with cannons on them or whatever. But um, yeah, so I mean, like there's that, but they got drones, and again, they can
Mhm.
send that drone to China or Russia or Iran or Pakistan, and they can take it apart and get to know a little bit about how those things work. I mean, it's like any one of those countries having one, any of that stuff is bad,
Mm.
but they don't have, like, if they don't have all the command and control software and things like that, like, it makes it less bad, but still, yeah,
Mm.
it's
Mm.
crazy.
Mm.
But that's one of the things. Okay, like I want to get back to the women,
Mm.
because okay, you had, I mean, some of the things I'm going to say I thought were a little silly, but I mean the advancements that women made. So you had a generation of women that didn't have Taliban control and were free to do what they wanted. And okay, like some of the things that I'm going to say are silly, and I don't mean, I'm not disparaging the thing itself. I just think it was poorly timed. In 2006, they had a theater company, and if I remember correctly, it was an all women's theater company. Great, have it, fine. But then they put on Shakespeare. I'm like, well, shouldn't you put on something local, maybe, or whatever? And I'm not disparaging the arts. I know like art and all that is important, but it was 2006, so this was really only a few years after. I mean, Kabul was still getting attacked up until 2005, like, fairly consistently. So it wasn't like things were completely calm. It's like, okay, there are a lot more important things in putting up a theater company. Like, like, but I like, it it was just that I was like, okay, I'm just like, maybe the timing's wrong, but like they did stuff, like some of that stuff was a little silly, but everything that I saw, like, professional courses, so how to start a business, it's like, just basically learning everything that they couldn't learn under whatever, like for 20 years. Um, and then like all that was great, but one thing they didn't do is, because I'd see it. The majority of the students in school were boys, so don't get me wrong there, but it's not enough of the population is getting educated, but the majority of the chunk that is getting educated were boys. But like all the little kids, like there'd be a market that comes by every week to all the bases, and they would travel around. All the fathers and uncles, whatever, would bring the little kids with them, and the little kids would be working in these markets, and it was like all the time. They weren't ensuring that kids were going to school, like enough as it is. So everything they did to empower women, what they didn't do was, especially out in the countryside, because everything that I saw was concentrated, like the efforts were concentrated in the cities, obviously, because that's where the protection was. They couldn't go out to the countryside as much, but that's where you really need it. So it sounds really bad to say, but like boys didn't learn why it was important that women have their rights. Like it was given to them at the point of a gun. I mean, like it's apparent now, it was given to them at the point of a gun. And there are men in Kabul who are protesting. Okay, and that's a good thing. But again, that's like the result of efforts being only done in one area, when the majority of the population was out in the rural segments of the country. So it's like such a complete wasted opportunity.
I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you. I think that, you're going to need a lot more than 20 years to make those kinds of changes. So if we look at, say, for example, there's, that Twitter page called Before Sharia Ruined Everything. And then it shows pictures of the way women in Iran used to dress, women in Libya and Kuwait and Egypt and all over the Arab world, how they used to be free and going to university and wearing whatever they want, doing whatever they want, going to music concerts, blah, 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 all the stuff that is now forbidden and haram and whatnot. And the truth of the matter is, there in the 60s and 70s that existed, but those were very small, privileged, elite groups of people. The vast majority were still, with a mindset that is hundreds of years ago. But the tragedy that we're talking about here with Afghanistan is, in 20 years, there's no way that we were going to be able to change to pull an entire society, a century forward. But there were a lot of bright lights in there. And those bright lights have been snuffed out. That's the tragedy here. So like we're talking about the girls robotics team, and, I saw the first female politician. She was a mayor, I think. I can't remember actually what she was. Has now had to run to go to Germany. So those are the kinds of women, the kinds of men as well, who would have been changing hearts and minds and being the Nelson Mandela, the Martin Luther King, the Gloria Steinems, you know what I mean? Those people have now been forced to flee. And now what is the hope that the country is going to get pulled forward? It's going to progress in any way.
Oh, okay, like it's completely lost. Like I shouldn't say completely lost, because you'd have to go back in again. But the one thing about the kids though, and the generation, the demographic hasn't changed since pretty much when the Russians left. About half the population of the country is under 15. Like right now, it's 46%. So, yeah, again, yes, I agree with you that it's hard to get stuff out there, but they didn't leave the cities. If they when they started drawing down, instead of closing those bases, if they'd sent those soldiers further out, because they already had bases like called forward operating bases that were further out, if they reinforced those bases and had more people there, then you could have had more services, you could have had more things come in, and but they just stayed in the cities. And that's what I'm saying, like, because if you have a population that young, get them while they're young. It's, you could have, and again, I'm not saying these are, they're going to be like, like
Saviors.
completely, like they're not going to be completely like, okay, we're all 100%, full enlightenment or whatever, but you might have, like, because when the Taliban came back, it came out of the countryside, and it was coming in from Pakistan as well and all that. Like, I mean, if there had been some concerted effort, even in the last 5 years, or, there would have been less of acceptance of Taliban, I think, in the outlying areas than there would have been now. I mean, I'm not, we're probably taking 10 to like kind of balance it out, but it was just, they had no basis for anything. They had no basis for why is this being done. They, like, anything I've read on education, it's, they were getting people who were just finished high school in Kabul to go teach in the countrysides.
Yeah.
So it's, nothing against those kids, but they're kids, and they, how are they supposed to teach? It's like, yeah, I just see that as a huge failure of time and effort, because what you lost with all the advancements for women, like, to reclaim that now is going to take another huge effort, and they're going to have to push back, and all the people who trusted you, they're not going to trust you now.
Never.
So, like, where are you going to go? Like, it's hard.
This is beautiful for the Taliban, because they promised that freedom, democracy, education, like this is what they were selling. And they're like, stick with us, and, life will be fruitful. Trust us, and we will, help you progress. And now they fucked everybody over.
Oh, yeah.
So all those people that are left are angry, resentful, hurt. And it's going to play so easily into being anti-Western.
I'm more worried about, I'm not discounting the anti, okay, yeah, but I'm also, but it's like, I don't, the anti-Western thing is there, but okay, you have a pocket of ISIS there. You have a pocket of resistance up near the north somewhere, if I remember correctly from the map I saw. Even under the Taliban rule, Afghanistan was a divided country. I mean, it's tribal, right? So the Taliban are mostly Pashtun, and that's about 40% of the population. The next biggest, I think, are the Tajiks. And, so, like, there's going to be fighting. It's going to break out. It's going to, and there's just going to be more death. But yeah, it's crazy. And sorry, like, I want to jump back to something you said before, like, about those pictures, because I was going to mention that, like, even now under NATO, all those communities out in the countryside, women were still living like, wear the burqa, where you can't leave the house, you can't do whatever. So that's what I mean. Like,
change in these 20 years for them.
Again, I think more should have been done, and I don't know what's going to happen now, but I'm just like I said, I'm afraid about all the countries that were getting advancements, no matter how small. But Boko Haram's in Africa. ISIS went down to sub-Saharan Africa. Are they going to start coming back up? North Africa is still, like, we're sitting right there. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff in Libya. It just, because, hey, who's going to stop them, right?
It's so depressing. It's like, I don't want to think about it. It's too demoralizing. And I think that I agree with everything that you were saying about them not doing enough, but it wasn't even just that they didn't do enough, it's that they were doing the wrong things. And so I don't agree with military intervention. I had no problem when they were saying we need to leave Afghanistan. We've been there for 20 years. We need to bring our men and women home. Absolutely. That's not a problem. The problem is how you did it. The problem was, not getting people out safely first, but then taking your troops out first. The problem
Yeah.
was shutting down the air base and letting the Taliban have control over it so that when you sent Americans back again to pick up people, the Taliban already had control. Like it was just it was a major clusterfuck.
Yeah.
That's
Okay,
the problem.
but here's the thing, like, yeah, okay, you have to bring the troops back, whatever. But the problem with all of that was when the troops were there, they were doing things they shouldn't have been doing. They should have been more concentrating on security and stuff like that, and the rest of it, like the nation building, providing services, getting all that out there. Yes, there were contractors out there, but a lot of them were just like Halliburton. Okay, we're going to run everything for the military, then we're going to go get these contracts. But it was them doing the work. It should have been, okay, you know what? We're going to do the work.
Teach a man to fish.
But it's not just teach a man to fish. It's at the same point. It's let private companies do it. We will provide this stuff. Whatever funding comes from the U.S. government, I don't care. It comes from NATO. They'll do the work. They'll train the Afghanis. They'll let the Afghanis run it with a bit of supervision. Then finally, they'll just leave and provide support. So I mean, if you do that, okay, like they needed roads. So if we send a construction company down, make the roads, train local people, get them to do it. Here, now you've got a trained workforce. We need to build buildings. Same thing. It's the military.
That's Qatar, UAE, Saudi Arabia. They all use that.
But it would
strategy.
Yeah, but all you're doing is you're doing that, and as you're putting that infrastructure in, it's a lot easier for NGOs to go down there. It's a lot easier for aid groups to go down there, and it's a lot easier to get. If you've got the infrastructure, you can get the education to people. You can get services to people. You can get all kinds of things. And people see a tangible improvement. So bring the soldiers back. But again, how are you going to do it? But even if they did everything properly and they got out all the people that helped them, you still have millions of people left in that country at the mercy of the Taliban, and
Correct.
It's not going to be any better for those people whatsoever. Right? You're doing it in a more graceful way, and then it wouldn't have gotten
then
all
you're
this
still
media.
leaving them in the end.
No,
you're
wouldn't
right.
have gotten this media coverage, and the women there who were there, they would have still been screwed. And it's like, okay, I was never a soldier. I'm a civilian. I'm not trying to do like any kind of stolen valor or anything like that, but I feel a little like betrayed. I mean, I spent 6.5 years there, and whatever. Yeah, I was setting up communication systems for NATO, but all my spare time, like when I'm like, depending on contracts where I was working, whatever was going on, like I built desks for schools and stuff like that. And it's just like, so all that was for nothing, like absolutely nothing. Yeah, and it was like the last contract I was on, the last 2 years, every Friday they would list, they'd call it Fallen Heroes, and they would list the names of all the like anyone who was NATO, Afghan, or contractor, and they died. They would list their names, and it's like you might have, I'll call them funerals because that's what they were, like ramp ceremonies when they load the bodies on the planes. I'm like for me, it's like, okay, you guys were there and you did nothing, like absolutely nothing, and graceful pullout or not, and saving all your people, like you've left the whole country to rot now, and you're going to need military to go back in and clean it up. Like there's no way, like you said, you cannot negotiate with these people. They're not going to be inclusive. They're not going to be, they're not going to respect diversity.
I'm going to tell you what my conspiracy theory is. This is my conspiracy theory. This is what I had the thought that nobody is this stupid. Like they had to know, America, especially US military, they had to know that this was going to happen, because even me, and I know nothing about, I'm not a politician, don't do anything about foreign policy. I'm not even an American. I'm not involved. And even I could see that this was going to end badly. 2 + 2 is 4. If you're going to walk away, let the Taliban have control. They're going to ally with your enemies, and they're going to get stronger, and they're going to come for you. And maybe this was something that they want to happen so that they have the excuse to finally go in there and drop bombs. So sort of the way 9/11 was a good excuse for Bush to go into Iraq and get Saddam Hussein out.
I guess, but I mean,
because now they're going to hit Iran, China, Pakistan, all of their enemies. Hamas is involved in there. They're all there. It's a big soup of shitheads.
Yeah. Okay. I want to kind of jump back to something you said a little earlier and kind of relate it to your book. Mm-hmm. All right. So 3 stories from 2015, and they're all 2 are like based on the Westerns, and 1 is based on something that happened to an Afghani. It was the woman, Fakunda Musafzai. Okay, so she had accused an imam of selling charms with Quran verses, and then he accused her of burning the Quran, and she got, basically torn to bits. But what had happened was the next day the women went, and that same imam was about to pray over her body, and they stopped him. Women stopped him. Then a crowd gathered, and they went with the women, and the women buried her themselves, and a group of men protected them. Now I'm like, okay, they happened in Afghanistan. Like, well, that's what I'm saying. This was 2015. So the men in Kabul, these would have been boys in like 2003. They were given some sort of education. They were given some sort of, this is why. Now, the other side of it, which ties into your book, a U.S. Army captain saw an Afghan military commander raping a little boy, like the Butcha-Buzzy.
Oh God, I don't want to hear the rest of the story. Okay. I've already heard this so many fucking times.
And the captain got reprimanded.
Yeah, right? It's their culture. Turn around. Don't look at it. Yeah.
And in 2015, at the same time, the University of Kabul started offering a master's programs in gender and feminist studies. So the Army's doing cultural relativism. They're teaching, like, this is coming from the West, right? So the West is bringing in, when they should be bringing in John Milton and David Hume, they're bringing in Judith Butler and Bell Hooks, and the military is bringing in cultural relativism, and the young men in Kabul are defending women while the women are actually breaking how many edicts by burying their friend.
Yeah.
And it's mind-boggling. And we got, okay, you mentioned China called the Taliban our brothers, like Monsef yesterday, or one of our members of parliament. So the exact same thing.
Women and protection of women and genders, some diversity or something like that. Like that's her role too. And she's going to call these men who treat women like that her brothers.
Yeah. That's, again, what the hell were you thinking? Okay, whatever. Educators, I don't even want to call them educators, but academics from the States come in and put that in. Okay, that's the university. But what the hell is the military doing with cultural relativism? I mean, there was a general recently said, "Oh, we're hoping the Taliban will be inclusive," and it was a general saying this, and I was like, "Oh my God, like Jesus Christ!"
God.
So I want to bitch about this for a bit, so I'll let you start. The wokeness of it all.
I do see that a lot in my work, where the people in the Arab world, people in the Muslim majority world, honestly, like, they're the enlightened ones now. They really are. They're the ones that are moving forward with what I would call, true feminism, like first wave, second wave feminism. And they scoff at us over here in the West and our so-called feminists who are really just supporting the patriarchy and ignoring them. And it's the same thing with the LGBT activists over in the Muslim world as well. They're the ones that I respect. And I have a lot of, I mean, I'm just in awe at their bravery. But it's like if you go back to the, to the 80s and how the gay activists were back then. Do you know what I mean? Like it was a different energy. It wasn't about, it was, we're here, like we're proud of who we are and fuck you if you don't like us.
Yeah.
Now it's like, why don't you like me? Validate me.
Oh.
Do you know what I mean? Like
Oh, God,
it's the exact opposite. Whereas, our Gen X kind of generation, we didn't want the affirmation from the man, like our boy George, or what's that British guy's name? The one that married Iman. David Bowie and all them. Like they weren't looking to give themselves they didn't want to be labeled. They didn't want people to use a specific pronoun. Like they didn't fucking care. I don't care who you are or what you have to say about me. This is who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way they are in the Middle East now. They have that energy of where it feels powerful versus over here. The activists are so worried about politics and offensiveness and making sure that, from what I can see, are window dressing useless things. Because I don't think that putting a rainbow on a cereal packet is helpful to any gay person or ever has been. Do you know what I mean? Like they're putting their energy in what I think are really stupid things. It's just virtue signaling.
Okay, but there is one aspect of it that. So, Izzy Diab, like I think you follow her on Twitter. Okay. So I'd spoken to her and we were talking about this. So one aspect of this stuff that is actually harming the Middle East, and I've seen a couple of interviews with another woman in India and how it harms the women in India. It's especially the post-colonial stuff, because I mean, because of, that has a lot of cachet in the Middle East. Like they won't okay. I'm really glad that like North Africa, the Amazigh are pushing back and they're getting some of their rights back. Like their language is recognized, like in Morocco and Algeria, I believe. I'm not sure about Tunisia, and so like they're pushing back on that. But like it's easy for the imams to now take that garbage and use it as, it's anti-imperialist. They can use that language. It's an easy tool.
No, it's true. Yeah.
And it sells it to the morons out here because, like you said, hate the West, blah, 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 blah. You're taking away their culture. You're doing, whatever, like the god awful paper called The Virtuous Cut about FGM, like crap like that. So it actually causes harm out there.
Yes.
And I mean, like in India, this woman was talking about how the whole gender studies stuff, where women didn't even have the rights in India that they are afforded in the West, and India is a little bit more liberal than a Muslim country, like, but, there's still, there's plenty of rape, like there's horrific stuff that goes on like this, but women didn't even have their safety. And now they've latched onto hijras and saying, hijras are, transgender, but some of them were turned into eunuchs as little kids and just left the temple steps. And that's how they became hijras. Like it's not something that's looked upon well in the society, and it's like so these people glom onto it, and like they're importing stuff or exporting stuff to those countries that's going to take away the rights from women. And it's like whatever I say about it here, like that's one of my bigger complaints about it. Like you're dumping this on people who don't even have freedoms that you enjoy, and you're gonna like immiserate them even more.
Yeah. I don't think that they see it that way. They think that it's like that meme with Ralph from The Simpsons where he's like, I'm helping.
No, they're missionaries. They're taking their new religion and they're bringing it to the great unwashed.
Mm-hmm.
right? It's we have to go protect those savages from the evil West. I mean, it's exactly what it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't know if like all that anti-West sentiment used to be much stronger than it is today. It's today, it's kind of it's mellowed out. So with this newer generation, they're not quite as anti-West as their parents were. And I think that they are fighting for their individual liberties. And they are recognizing that there are many obstacles to that.
Yeah, though the young people, I'll agree with you there. The young people want their, freedoms, and they want their individual, like the ones I've spoken to out there. And I look at the stuff Faisal's doing with like IPB, and like you see the stuff like they're all young kids doing this stuff, like
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, so it's a generational thing. So again, it's wait for the older generation to kick off.
Yeah, because that's what worked in the 70s and 80s was there was a huge anti-American, anti-West sentiment. That's what caused all the problems in Lebanon and Syria and Iraq. And that's what got my mom even to, because Sayyid Qutb, who was an Egyptian, because it was there too. This was the whole Islamist, Muslim Brotherhood, Hizb ut-Tahrir propaganda was the West have it wrong. The West are evil. Turn to Islam. Islam is the answer. But now this generation of kids are seeing, no, it's not the answer, because they're not being deluded. So I guess you can look at how in Iran, 40 years ago, the people were deluded into thinking the Islamic regime would be the better solution to the problems that they had at the time. But now, of course, they realize, whoops, that was a mistake. It was just like a different flavor of shit. And I think that's happening throughout the Muslim majority world.
Like I said, I'm happy about the young, and like the thing with Iran, though, I think it's you don't have to go back to the Shah. It's not, it shouldn't be one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but at the same point, I think like this is what it would have been important for Afghanistan as well, is you don't enforce this. Okay, you have to have this type of government. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Give them the framework, give them the tools, and these are the rights you should protect. This is what you should do. Here are the different options, and like I think that would be better. So in a place like Iran, I don't think there's going to be some sort of intervention. Again, leave it to the people themselves to figure out what they want as a system. Like they might want some constitutional monarchy. I don't know, but it shouldn't. Like the interference should be as far as we'll help you push off the mullahs or whatever, like anything like that, right? Like, but beyond that, it shouldn't be we're going to impose like installing cards.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
No, I obviously, yeah, completely with you on that. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Don't impose your own, what you think is, just help people to get the freedom to decide what they want for themselves.
Yeah. I mean, I saw it over and over and over again. Now, granted, I'm going to be biased here because I worked with the military, but like the aid agencies were just awful. I mean, they would go in and say, okay, you need this. Instead of asking, what do you need? It's like, you need this and you have to get this. And I mean, I saw so when I worked in Haiti, we were setting up temporary offices for different ministries. One of them was the Ministry of Health. My client was CETA. So I reported to them. I did what they told me. I didn't report to the Ministry of Health in Haiti. Mm. So CETA says, this is what you're going to give them. Oh. I get there. It's not what they need. Then I have to go back and negotiate and say, look, we need to do this, this, and this. And and someone else could have come in and just said, sorry, this is what you're getting, walked away. And I was like, okay, well, they don't need this. They need something else. And I'm like, here's a bridge that'll make what they want. So someone else could have just said, sorry, no, this is what we were told to do. This is what you're getting. Mm. And, but I keep seeing that with a lot of aid agencies. Like it's just like I know you do work with like you're working, you have the non free hearts, free minds, but like have you run across stuff like this with aid agencies or like that? Like I mean, it must be
Well,
maddening.
the only aid agencies we work with, so one of them is called Rainbow Railway, and so it's Rainbow Railroad, which is a nod to the Underground Railroad, and they help people leave not just Muslim majority countries, but predominantly Muslim majority countries where they can be persecuted or executed. And I'm in conversation with some atheist organizations that also help people to get out. But I understand what you're saying, but we'll give people it's a patronizing attitude, and also it's just I think a lot of aid agencies don't really care about the people that they're aiding. They just care about their agency. So it's like a lot of activists. They don't really care about helping the people that they are purporting to try and help. They are just looking to elevate themselves. So if you're looking at all of these, Ibram Kendi X or who was that? D'Angelo woman and stuff like that, like they don't actually care about solving the problem. They probably will not like it if the problem is solved because perpetuating this gives them a source of income. So I don't want to paint with a broad brush, but I will say that probably a lot of agencies are like that too. I mean, there is the human rights group that's led by Ken Roth that famously took a huge chunk of money from a Saudi real estate mogul with the promise that he would never use that money to aid gay people in the Middle East. So you call yourself a human rights group, but you really just cared about getting the money and you promise not to help humans with that money. So
yeah, don't get me wrong. Not all, obviously, but some of the things I saw and heard. I mean, okay, this is a rumor. I cannot corroborate this or whatever, but so like, there's a few companies that do like those micro loans. So loan a woman $500 so she can get a sewing machine, this and that, and she can start up a little sewing business and she can make money. Things like that. Someone comes in and says, I need $500 for whatever. The person giving out the loan says, okay, but you're going to ask for 1,000. And the person asks for 1,000, they get the 1,000, but the loan officer pockets 500 and gives the person 500, and the person has to pay back 1,000. There was a lot of stuff like that, but there was, I mean, I saw it with some aid agencies and stuff, especially when I was in Haiti, where it's like, well, we're going to build this. And I'm like, okay, you're building. So one of the things that was needed was homes. And it's like, I'm like, you're building North American style homes in Haiti. They don't need that. It's like it's really hot and muggy most of the year. You need like open, cool spaces. Well, okay, I mean, like Egypt's drier, but still, I mean, in the Emirates and it's hot and it's humid and it's there. So it's like you don't have like these little closed houses like you have here. Like it's just like, oh, we're just going to give you this, and it's like, no, like. So
it's not being respectful of that's why I feel that's really patronizing. Like, wouldn't there be sort of project managers of those groups that go in and have conversations and say, what is it that you need? What can we do for you? Is that missing?
No, but okay, that's missing. But that's what I mean. Like getting back to the, places like Afghanistan or Iran or anything like that. Like when these, quote unquote experts go in there and they're going to help them nation build. They're like, okay, you're going to have this. We're going to bring them democracy. We're going to bring them freedom. It's like, okay, you know what? Democracy would then mean it's the voice of the people. Let the people decide what they want. And
But they don't want them to decide the wrong thing. They want them
Yeah.
to choose
Well,
what
yeah.
they want them to choose. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Go back to Iran, like Mossad.
Mm,
You know,
yeah.
you know, you can talk about the Shah all you want, but it goes back kind of to Mossad. Like if that hadn't happened, like,
Yeah.
So yeah, like
Turkey too, another example. But yeah.
Oh God. I mean, okay. Look, it should go back to free hearts, free minds, because we've been talking for a bit. But I mean, I'm sad to say it, but I mean, you guys could have a lot more, clients. I don't even call it clients, but like you're gonna have a lot more people that need help now. It's just, it's sad to say.
Yeah. We already do have a lot of people contacting us from Afghanistan, but they're not looking for psychosocial support. They're looking, it's a lot more dire than that right now. And it's what is demoralizing. That's why it's so frustrating for me, because I feel so helpless and so hopeless, because people write to me thinking that I have like a magic wand. I wish I had a magic wand. But it's a really, it's just a really dire situation that's happening there. And I guess all I can really say is that I am, in a weird way, grateful that at least we're talking about it. Like at least the world is aware of it. Because I get horror stories from Somalia, from Egypt, from Saudi Arabia, from Sudan, from, all over the world. But people aren't noticing those people. So at least with the spotlight on Afghanistan, I feel like there is, as hopeless as it feels, I feel like there is some hope, because the light is shining on Biden right now, and he has to do something. He has to try and save face somehow. And I don't know how things, I'm usually very optimistic. It's my coping mechanism. It's what's helped me survive this long, but I'm having a lot of trouble staying optimistic about this situation.
Okay. There's nothing to be done about Afghanistan right now unless you want to send troops back in. Anyone who says otherwise, they're lying to you. Like there's no way you're going to get anything done without troops. And I mean, it's horrible. And I'm like you mentioned, like the robotics team, they got out. Mm. There was, again, there was like that film, like the Women's Philharmonic. Mm. I mean, I don't know if they got it, but there was one woman who was running a school, and she's like, 20 years ago, the Taliban came in and destroyed all the girls' education cards and records. And she's like, so they didn't want the kids to have school. And she's like, today I'm in my school doing the same thing because I don't want them to see the records of the kids and find out where the kids are. Yeah. I mean, like, that's horrific. And it's that's going to be, like, you can't get that back without, like, you can't talk your way out of that. You need troops to go back in. And
well, he has the excuse after this bombing, the suicide bombing. He's like, I'll hunt you down. So, I mean, I don't know what that means. I don't know what his plan is, but
yeah, whatever. But I mean, it's like, okay, he wants to go back in. But what stomach? Because again, people see it. It was a 20-year failure. Like, yeah, I fully agree that it was failure, but you need troops in there, and are people going to have the stomach for And sorry, but like, you didn't do anything in the last 20 years, so you're probably going to need at least another 20 years there getting things set up. Mm-hmm, it's not
just gaining trust again, and yeah.
Oh no, I it's horrific out there.
Yeah. And something weird too that I noticed, that I just commented to my husband. I didn't tweet about this because I didn't want to start a shitstorm, but I was when I first got on Twitter and I was constantly reading about, all of these American military that were killed in a suicide bombing, it wasn't until I started looking up articles that I realized there were like close to 100 Afghans that were also killed. Like that, it's almost like all of the condolences all over Twitter are only mentioning the fact that Americans were killed. And that that really pissed me off because I was like, why is that not being like, just say it in the same breath? Like, why do you have to, like, there was a video of Gary Sinise where he pulls down his flag at half mast and he's got tears in his eyes and he's talking about his brothers and sisters that have fallen. And I was like, just add and civilians. Like it seems to be like Afghan lives are cheap now. Or maybe they have been for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, okay, yes, they should, like, someone, you're again, I didn't see the video or whatever, and I'm not trying to give him any kind of excuses, but I think he was a Marine, so if he was talking about his
He was.
Marines that died, if he was kind of trying to salute Marines, I get it. But yeah, okay, yes, civilians and everything was killed. But again, take back, like I said, on my last contract. So it was a NATO base, and every Friday like everyone would stand at attention, and they would, like I said, list off the names, and it was military, like all militaries and contractors. But there were, I mean, and this could be from anything, right? This could be from gunfire. This could be from, but if it was explosions and stuff, no, they wouldn't list off the civilian names. But again, like that was a military base and they were doing a thing. But also, if you're going to list off all those names, if you're going to list off every single civilian name.
No, I understand in that context, that would be totally different because, like you said, it was a ceremony for military. But I'm just talking about how when I got on Twitter and I hadn't read any articles yet, I had just seen all of the posts. I mean, take a look after we hang up, just scroll through and you'll notice that it's not even mentioned. It's to the point that this one guy was saying, do we even call it terrorism if they're fighting the military people that are invading their country or whatever the fuck, which is a disgusting thing to say. But like that person, was he not aware that 100 civilians died? Like,
But yeah, I mean, that's just it though. They're not going to mention, like in an article, they'll talk about the civilian deaths, but they'll list the military members' names. Like even an article, but because again, like 100 civilians, I mean, that's the whole article then if you list all their names.
No, I don't want you to list their names. I want you to at least mention.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, I get what you're saying, like these, but at the same point, I think we're at a place where whether if you didn't vote for Biden, whatever, this is a way you can dig at him. Okay. So you pulled out, okay. Before that attack at the airport just recently, in the previous 18 months, not one American had been killed. And Biden pulls out in the way he did, and then whatever, there was that, I think it was like 4, or I don't know, I can't remember the number.
So this was a way to like throw it in his face.
Yeah.
Okay, I see.
So, like military members died. And so, yeah, I mean, like, okay.
It's always their game, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's always anything that happens in the world has to come from like this teeny tiny little left-right American perspective. That's always bring it back. How do we center ourselves?
Okay.
How do we make this about our politics?
Yeah. But there was that story that Douglas Murray told in his book there, The Madness of Crowds, or no, not the Strange Death of Europe, about the American contingent that was going around the Middle East apologizing for the Crusades.
Bless.
Even a country then.
You didn't exist. Yeah.
But yeah. No, they're ridiculous. Look, I don't want to keep you too much longer, so I'll let you have some last words about the plight of women. Please let people know where they can donate to Free Hearts, Free Minds, or how they can get a hold of you. And then, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. Please go to freeheartsfreeminds.com, click on testimonials, and read some of the stories of people that we've supported and how we've helped to change their lives. We are switching to a group session support because we have such a long waiting list, and it's so difficult for us to be able to help people one-on-one. We do still have relationships with private therapists for people that do require one-on-one, but we're able to help more people in less time now that we're doing group sessions. So if you are so inclined, please click on the donate button, either become a patron or a one-time donation with PayPal would be really, really helpful. We could really, really use the support.
All right. Well, great. Well, thank you very much again, Yasmine, for coming on. It's awesome talking to you.
My pleasure.
And thanks everyone for listening.